Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Women in Retail Talks. In today's episode, CEO of Charlotte Russe, Jenny Ming, talks about her top leadership tips at this year's Girl Talk West event, held in San Francisco. And now, on to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me to spend some time with all of you. It's really a pleasure to speak with a group of women and few men about retail. It's truly one of my most favorite topics. And of course, I've been in the retail business, I always say 30 plus years, but truly it's almost 40 years. So I'm almost like a dinosaur. But I truly love this field, and I feel like I probably know less today about retail than I did 10, 20 years ago, because it's ever-changing, it's always learning. I thought a lot about what I want to talk to all of you about today, since we have about 30 minutes together. So I really can't, I really need to narrow down. So, I'm often asked, if you could give one advice to be successful in retail, what would you suggest? So I've been asked numerous times. And it always comes back down to really about seizing opportunities. There's so many opportunities in front of you. And sometimes we tend to, I think especially as a woman, I tend to step back and not really looking at those great opportunities and move forward. So I want to kind of tell you stories that has happened in my career that has really propelled me moving forward. And I hope you could relate to some of it, and you could really understand some of the decisions I made along the way. So to start with, I want to just give you a little bit of my background, because I think if you understand that, you would understand, if I can be where I am today, all of you can be where, and even beyond, because I probably am one of those people that you wouldn't expect to be successful and be in running a company. So I immigrated with my family to the U.S. when I was 9 years old, and into the Bay Area. And I went to San Jose State, and I majored in home economics. And I learned a lot of people don't even know what that is. Home economics was certainly useful. I wanted to be a home ec teacher. And before I even graduate, my junior year, the California school system decided it wasn't academic enough, and pretty much decided to cross it off their curriculum. So here I am in my junior year. I haven't even graduated. I lost my job already. So my boyfriend then, who's now my husband, said, you should take some business classes because you could always find a job in business. And it's so practical. Of course, and he said, you love clothes, you should be a buyer. I know it sounds so simple, but it's really, you have to remember I was like 20 years old, right, or 19. And so I changed my major to merchandising, and I took some marketing classes, a minor in marketing and a minor in art. And when I graduated, I went to work at Mervyn's in the executive training program. I pretty much started, in the store as, a trainee. Then I worked my way up to be a department manager. And then I went to the buying office as a planner, allocator, an assistant buyer, and then became a buyer. I literally went through, pretty much every single step. And I have to say, I really love what I did. I loved it more than, studying for it. I really enjoy that process, really understanding who's the customer, what do they buy, what sells, what doesn't sell, that interaction, all of it I loved. When I became a buyer, I also started a family. Within 2 years, I had 3 kids. So how do I do that? I had a daughter first, and then 17 months later, I had twins, a boy and a girl twins. Of course, I've always been a high achiever. But even then, I probably didn't expect this. And so, of course, juggling being a mom and being a buyer it's never easy. But I had great support. My husband is incredibly supportive. My mom lived nearby. And of course, I had a wonderful live-in nanny. And it does take a village. You can never do this by yourself. I was really juggling and be able to balance both of it. And then one day, I got a call from Mickey Drexler. How many people have heard of Mickey Drexler? Okay, if you're not in retail, you should. because he's, at that time, was really kind of the Steve Jobs of the retail, right? He's literally, I got a call from him, and I literally just read an article about him Business Week, and then I got a call. And he was at the Gap and really introduced this really new business model called vertically integrated specialty retailing. So what it means is you literally control the entire supply chain. You build a brand, you design, you merchandise, you source your own product, you plan how much to buy, you decide how much to price it, you market it directly to your consumer, and you visual merchandise it in the store, and then you sell it directly to the customer. I know it sounds like, okay, this is kind of basic, but you have to remember this is almost 30 years ago. It was very new, it was very different, and it was taking retail by the storm. It was a very disruptive model at that time. So here I had him on the phone. He said, I heard you're a really, really good buyer. You're one of the best buyers out there, and you want to come in and talk to me about opportunity at the Gap. When you have 3 kids under the age of 3, the last thing you want is really a new job. But you know what? I was dying to talk to him. Of course, I said, yes. So in fact, I took the day off when my twins turned 1 and went to speak to Mickey. And literally within 10 minutes of our conversation, I knew I wanted to go work for him. And why, you ask? He just launched Gap Kids a few weeks ago, and miniaturized all the adult clothes into something small. And of course, I bought something for my daughter, which is a little denim skirt, and she's 2.5, literally just fell off of her. So I was complaining as a customer about the fit. I say, it's way too big. Did you know that? Because I wasn't really looking for a job. I was very interested in talking to him. Those are always the best kind of interview, right? You could really be your true self. And he wasn't defensive. Right away, he picked up the phone. He called the assistant buyer, knew her name, and said, yeah, bring it up. In fact, they knew that the sizing was too big. And he took that, and he said, bring it home, try on your daughter, let me know if it fit her. So I was really impressed because he listened to the customer, he reacted to it, he wanted my feedback, he wasn't defensive, and last but not least, he knew the assistant buyer's name. And here I am, I was running one of the largest department at Mervyn's, which is junior knits and sweater, and I didn't even know if the president knew my name. And here he is, he knew her name. I know these little things is important, it matters. That means he's very in touch, he knows what's going on inside the company. So within that 10 minutes, I was thinking to myself, how do I go home and tell my husband I really want a new job, and that one that travels a lot? But you know what? When you know it's right, and it's about learning something new, and you know it's right, you have to go for it no matter what. And I did. I quit Mervyn's, and I went to work at the Gap. I was the second merchant that the Gap brought in. At that time, Gap was considered a fairly, I wouldn't say a large company, a fairly small company. Another thing he did, he said, what department did you want? And I said, of course, I want Gap Kids, because I have 3 kids. He said, sorry, somebody is running it. What else would you like? And I said, how about men's? I never ran men's before, because I've always been a women's merchant. And he started laughing. He said, no women's merchant ever want to buy men's. But I said, look, I want to because it's something different. I want to learn something new. So he gave me Men's Active, which is a very small department. I think it was about $50 million. And it was probably 5 items. And within every year, I was able to grow it 50 to 100%. 7 years later, that $50 million became $800 million. And within 4 or 5 years, it became a division. And I was promoted from, a merchandise manager to be a VP DMM. And I have to say, I never thought of myself going beyond being a buyer, because maybe where I was at Mervyn's, I didn't see that path. At Gap, I was able to see that path. And I felt like my career path is unlimited. So I think it has a lot to do with the person and the people you work with. And I felt like I had a lot of opportunity. So I was I was able to become a VP, but I also brought in a lot of iconic product. Some of you might not know what they are, but if you are a little older, you might know. So the pocket tee, was very well known. When I walked in, it was about 100,000 units. When I left, it was 5 million units. I also bought in 8515 fleece, which is a very cotton-rich fleece. 8515 is a very special blend, which I worked on, and it also grew it into almost a $200 million. We did, garment dyed thermals. We did polar fleece. I could go on and on. So I think certainly, I really never look back on the decision I make, leaving something that is comfortable and expected to something totally new and what I could learn. And so 7 years within that, my husband got a new job in Hong Kong. And so he was moving back in the beginning of the year, and I was going to bring the kids and follow in the summer. And so I went to talk to Mickey again. I said, I know you will find me a job in Hong Kong because we have a very large Hong Kong sourcing office. And I love sourcing, so I think it would work. And he looked at me, he said, we were just thinking about launching a new brand or a new division. So we have Gap here in the middle, and then we have Banana, which is kind of the higher end. We don't really play in the value mass sector. So we thought, you could spearhead that. And I thought, oh, you're just saying it because you want me to stay. He said, no, we're really serious. And literally, the board of directors just approved it last week. And I was just about to talk to you about it. Of course, as soon as he said it, I really, really wanted to do this, because how often do you get to do a startup backed up by the Gap? Not very often. So of course, my husband already accepted this new job. So I went home and said, guess what? I got this great opportunity. And of course, just like everything else, we wait what is both is great opportunity. The bottom line was how we made the decision was, where's the best place to bring up our children? And we both decided was here. So I was able to take on this new opportunity, and he actually did not move back to Hong Kong. So sometimes it is hard, to make the decision, and we always made the decision as a family. And I have to say, so we started this new division called Gap Warehouse with 11 people in February of 1993, and we got it in store with this new idea by August. And I did, I was a functional expert in merchandising, right? And in this new endeavor, I was able to broaden myself to more of a general manager. So I got planning and allocation. I got visual merchandising and store design. I got sourcing and production, and of course, merchandising. So by doing a startup, by, looking at this new opportunity, I was able to really broaden myself to be a general manager beyond just being a functional expert. So I think some of the decisions you make is very important to see what you're going to be able to learn and grow from there. I was just saying to Elizabeth, I said, of course, looking back, this new division turned out to be Old Navy. And I know when I was employee number 1, when I accepted that job, I can't tell you how many people felt sorry for me and felt bad for me because they felt that, I was leaving the big brand of Gap, and, in any startup, you don't know how it's going to work out. It's almost like everybody felt like I was being pushed to Siberia and that this was not a good thing. I never saw it that way. I only saw it as an opportunity. I never at 1 minute thought this was a big risk. I actually felt it would be a wasted opportunity or an opportunity that if I didn't take it, it will never happen again. And so needless to say, I don't want to go into tell you all about Old Navy, but literally we had 11 people, and we had 4 leaders that was running it. And I, of course, as I said, was the head merchant. We have a head of marketing, a head of stores and finance, and then we had a head of product and design. And all 4 of us reported to Mickey. And we were the first brand or first apparel brand to hit $1 billion in less than 4 years. It's never been done before. And I think one of the key thing about Old Navy was because we didn't take clothes seriously. Because we really literally didn't think clothes was that important. Because there are so many things that is more important than clothes, like education, your mortgage payment. I mean, go on, and maybe number 10th might be clothes. And so we didn't take it seriously, so a lot of our ads, a lot of our marketing is kind of tongue-in-cheek, nothing serious. And I think by doing that, we really stood out. But more than important than anything is that we have incredible value for clothes because we didn't think you need to spend too much for that. And I think as a head merchant, this is when I really learned that every single aspect of the business matters. It counts, not just having the right product. Because I could tell you, if the marketing was not as breakthrough, we probably wouldn't have such a recognizable brand. Within 5 years, the brand had a recognitionable rate of 93%, which is pretty unbelievable. So I think within the 5th or 6th year, Mickey asked me, she said, Jenny, do you want to be the president? I said, no, of course not. I have the best job. I'm the head merchant. And of course, also because everything was working so well, I just didn't want to change or ruin the dynamic. So I turned it down, and then he started interviewing. And then, of course, he was being so nice. He would say, but I want you to meet everybody that comes through. So during that year, I was meeting a lot of different people. And every time I met them, I looked at them, I said, God, if they came in and became president, I would be so bummed. So the following year, during the review again, I said to Mickey, I said, remember last year you asked me whether I'm interested in being president of Old Navy? I said, yes, I am. I'm very interested. And he started laughing. He said, it's about time. I've been waiting for you to say something for the whole year. So sometimes I think we don't give ourselves enough credit, or something that is working so well, we think we are going to ruin it. So of course I said to him, I said, look, I would be only interested in doing it if my peers, if my partners say I could and want me to be president. And he started laughing again. Only you would want that. Nobody else would be doing that. And I think if I was a guy or a man, I probably would not have asked. But again, I didn't want to ruin the relationship we have because we started it together. And all of a sudden, that relationship now, instead of being a peer, I'm now their boss. How would that be? And all three of them decided I should be the president. I deserve to be. So that was nice, yes. But, looking back, would I have done this again? No. I could literally tell you immediately. Looking back, I was like, what was I thinking about? But again, I think, I think so many of us don't see our self-worth or have the confidence that we can do it because we are worried, or I should say I was worried that I might fail in that position. And so I was the first Old Navy president, and I held that position for, I think, almost 7 years. During, I have to say, so I was in Old Navy for 13 years. I would say the 10th year I was ready to move on because I feel like somebody else needs to come in and really take it to the next level. And, when I look back at that 13 years, Old Navy grew to be $7 billion. Instead of the 11 people in headquarters, we had 600, and we had over 100,000 people in the field. And so it's really, truly something I am so proud of. And, looking back, of course, people think, wow, within, I think the second or third year, everybody like, Jenny, that was the smartest thing you ever did. Versus like, are you crazy? You want to do this? Because then everybody jumped on the bandwagon saying, you know what, actually was really, really smart to do. So I think the reason I want to share this story, I know a lot of people did not know about it and think, of course, it was very well said that, whenever you do a startup inside a larger company, sounds very easy, but it's never easy. But would you turn down something like that? Never. You should never, because doing a startup really, truly broaden your scope and also really gives you access to things you would never be able to even ever imagine. So after 13 years at Old Navy and 20 years at Gap Inc., I retired. And I wasn't sure that I want to work again. So I wanted to take time, and I was fortunate that I can take time. And then, so the first thing I did was I joined a board. I joined Kaiser Permanente. And a lot of people might say, why Kaiser? I was very determined not to go into another retail business because I think I needed to take a break. And I also think that it's nice to learn something new. If you know nothing about me, you would know that actually I am all about continuous learning. I love to learn something new every day if possible. So being in, I remember when Kaiser called me, I'm like, I know nothing about healthcare. I know nothing about medicine. And you know what they said to me? She said, you know a lot about people. And guess what? That's exactly what we need, because we want to treat our patient as we treat our customer, our consumer. And we have a lot of people know about medicine. We don't need that. So out of all the company that I interview for the board, I picked Kaiser because I really like that that's how they are thinking for the future. And what I also love is their mission, right? Obviously, it's a nonprofit run like a profit, and every single dollar goes back into the community. I love that. So I was on the board for 8 years. And then in the meantime, I did a lot of nonprofit. I did a lot of U.S.-China relationship because it's something that is very near and dear to my heart. And then I talked to a lot of private equity. So I joined Advent International and really learned how to evaluate and really look at how you buy company and turn it around. I thought that might be interesting. And all along, they wanted to buy me something to run and be a CEO. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do that because, I said, I really only want to do that if I truly want to do that, not just because it sounds good or feels good, because once you sign on something like that, it takes a lot of time. And so I did. And they bought Charlotte Russe. The reason I was interested in Charlotte Russe because it's fast fashion, another different business model. So is all about reacting to business, not so much about planful and strategic. It's really about the supply chain literally instead of 4 months to 6 months to 8 months, 9 months, 12 months, is really about weeks. It's 2 to 10 weeks. So I was very intrigued about that. And what we did was we took a fast fashion model and then we merged it the best of specialty, which is really being planful, strategic, about growing certain category. So that's kind of what Charlotte Russe is today. And I wanted to see if I can be a CEO because I think there is a difference between a divisional president and a CEO because everything, you run the whole thing, every function, the strategy about the future of the company, and also the financial that goes with it. I've always been one of those people that you don't want to regret what you didn't do. I'd rather fail than regret that I didn't do something. And so that's the reason I came back out to work. And the great thing was this time around was also able to work with so many people that one way or the other I've worked with before and in fact, I was saying to somebody, my entire leadership team are women, and not by design, but kind of, because one of my big things is really supporting working moms and supporting women in leadership roles, and it's just the right size that for me was very important to know everybody in the company and be in touch with them. And I would say that retail right now is going through obviously a lot of disruption, and that's the reason why I said I probably know less about retail than I did 5, 10, 20 years ago. But it's also the most challenging, and it's also the most fun. And it's because you could almost there's no rules, and you almost want to relook at everything. I know so many people keep asking me, Jenny, when are you going to retire? I say, there's no such thing as retirement today. You might slow down, but I said I'm actually even more excited about retail and where it's going to go. So certainly that's not something I'm thinking about. But in the meantime, I joined the board of Levi's, and I was on the board of Barney's for a time being, and also Paper Source. So I would consider myself a student of retail because I literally love all aspect of it, especially when it touches the customer. And so with that, I actually would like to stop. But the most important thing I could impart on you is seize any opportunity you see out there. Don't feel like you should take risks in your career. And then also make sure that you are continuously learning. When you stop learning, this is when it's a sign to tell you to move on. I know this is very much how I feel when I do the same thing over and over again. and it's not changing anything, this is, maybe it is time to move on. And Charlotte Russe is literally my third company I ever worked for, so I tend to be in a place long enough to really grow it and see it thrive. So I think, I want to make sure that it has worked for me. I want to make sure I share with all of you.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, be sure to visit our podcast channel page at www.wirlc.com/podcast for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on iTunes and Stitcher, but please remember to subscribe to our podcast channel page as well. Lastly, don't forget to connect with us on social on Twitter and Instagram at WIR Leadership.